y'all. So I've got a new mic here and I'm going to be speaking very softly. It's late at night. I really hope that the sound quality is good for you. And I am ready to finish up chapter 2 with you all about Bluebeard. I have gone through and made some notes and prepared to share just the essential points with you all. And of course, if you want to get more in depth, I highly recommend purchasing the book. It is available on Amazon. And again, it's called Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. So, chapter 2 is called Stalking the Intruder, the Beginning Initiation. And this is part 2, the second video that I have on this chapter. So the first video I made was just a really gentle introduction with some expanded thoughts. And if you're not familiar, just real quick, I want to say that the lens that I'm looking through when I review this book is through being on the receiving end of narcissistic abuse. So it's so related. It's crazy how much it resonates with you if you've been through something like that. So I knew it was time to pick up this book again and go through it again, and I thought I would do it with you guys and share with you. So the story of Bluebeard is one that is presented in this chapter, in chapter 2, and it's a story that she says is found in various cultures, and it's a little bit different depending on the country or the culture that it originates from. And so she shares that the version that she includes in the book is a blend of French and Slavic. So I'm not going to actually read the story to you guys as it's presented. I'm just going to give you the highlights of it. Okay, so Bluebeard is a story about, and let me just go ahead and say there's like I think the word is dichotomy. I could be totally wrong on that. I'll have to look it up. It just, sometimes words come to you and it's like, yeah, that feels right. But it's like a parallel. The story is about the predatory nature within our own psyche. And like I mentioned in the first video, it's like your inner critic that kind of halts any creative expression that you may have. But yet, this story also serves to make you aware of actual predators that are out there in the world, such as narcissists. So just keep that in mind, that there's like a dual meaning to it, or there can be. And so again, looking at it through the lens of narcissism, that's how we're going to be dissecting everything. So the story opens with talking about how there were 3 sisters who were courting the same man, and all 3 of them had like suspicions, like there were alarm bells going off, in their intuitions about this man, but they couldn't really put their finger on, what the problem was. And as he was courting them, or, dating them, he was, really showing out and bringing them lots of gifts. And, as you may have heard the term in narcissistic discussion, love bombing. He was just really kind of trying to impress them. But the 2 older sisters, even though they were impressed, they were kind of like, yeah, I don't think this is, they really didn't ignore their intuition, even though they didn't have any hard proof for why they should. So it was the youngest sister who, even though she had that intuitive feeling that, this was not a good idea to date this man, she talked herself out of listening to her own intuition, and how many times have we done that? How many times, this resonated with me, like how many times have we said, well, they are this way and they do bring this or that to the table, or, this and this and this is good. So you kind of question yourself from the get-go. And that's what's hard about your intuition, is a lot of times it doesn't feel like it's founded on anything. And when you're trying to be a logical person, you're looking for those concrete points and they're not there. So I think sometimes we can get in trouble when we're trying to be so logical that, this is the kind of situation that plays out where we ignore our intuition. So that's what happened with the youngest sister. So she continued to date this man and ignore that gut feeling that something was wrong. So what happened was he proposed and she married him. And he gave her a set of keys and said, hey, I got to go away for a while. Here's some keys, because he had like this grand house or castle. And he said, you can use any of the keys that you want on the keychain except this one. And there was one small key that had, like intricate scroll work. And, she didn't question him. And so he went about his way. He left on his trip wherever he was going. And then while he was gone, I guess it was an extended travel, her sisters came over to stay with her. And they were, just really excited to explore her new home, that she shared with this man. And they were trying out all the keys and, checking out all the rooms in the place. And of course, they got to that last key. And, she told them, hey, I'm not permitted to use this key, even though they didn't know what door it went to, which was interesting. But as they were going through the house, there was a door that kind of just creaked and shut by itself, and it caught their attention, and they realized that was the door. They had not looked inside yet, and that it must belong. The lock must be what goes to that key. So they knew they weren't supposed to look, but their curiosity got the best of them, right? Because that makes a good story. And so they opened the door with a key, and when they did, it was horrific. It was just skeletons, like bloody corpses, old corpses and skeletons laying around, and they freaked out and slammed the door shut. And then they realized that there was blood on that key. They had gotten blood from the room on that key, just peeking in there. So the youngest sister, his wife, was using her gown and trying to scrub the blood off, and like the more she tried, the worse it got. It just smeared everywhere, and they couldn't get rid of it, right? So the sisters left, and when he came home, she had tried her best to clean the blood off that key, and she couldn't. So he said, how was everything when I was gone? And she was like, great, everything's fine. And she had wound up hiding. I forgot she hid that key. So he was like, where's the small key? And she's like, I don't know. I guess I lost it, And he was like, he could tell she was lying. And so he was like, bull, where'd you put it? And she was really in trouble. And he immediately became enraged and abusive and was threatening to her. And so, because he knew that she had looked in the room. And come to find out, all of the skeletons in the room were his former wives. And so he was like telling her he's going to throw her in there too. So he was dragging her down the hall to throw her in that room too. And she's begging for her life. And so she said, please just give me like 30 minutes to myself in my chamber to, make peace with, God and my life or whatever. So he allowed her that. So when she was on her way there, or when she was there out the window or whatever, she was calling out to her sisters, he's going to kill me, get our brothers, help. So she sent for her brothers. So they came, and like just in the nick of time, like any good story, and they killed the man. They killed Bluebeard. So that's the story. And of course, it's all symbolic. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about next. And so I'm going to read a little bit to you on page 44. And this is right after the story is presented. So this section is called The Natural Predator of the Psyche. Okay, it's that low battery again. I can charge and charge and charge my phone. I don't know how it happens. Okay. The natural predator of the psyche. Developing a relationship with a wildish nature is an essential part of women's individuation. In order to execute this, a woman must go into the dark, but at the same time, she must not be irreparably trapped, captured, or killed on her way there or back. The Bluebeard story is about that captor, the dark man who inhabits all women's psyches, the innate predator. He is a specific and incontrovertible force which must be memorized and restrained. To restrain the natural predator of the psyche, it is necessary for women to remain in possession of all their instinctual powers. Some of these are insight, intuition, endurance, tenacious loving, keen sensing, far vision, acute hearing, singing over the dead, intuitive healing, and tending to their own creative fires. To me, I wrote the word passion out to the side. It's like a God-given fire, a spark inside of us that I feel like all those things she listed comes from. And so it says, Bluebeard represents a deeply reclusive complex which lurks at the edge of all women's lives, watching, waiting for an opportunity to oppose her. Although it may symbolize itself similarly or differently in men's psyches, it is the ancient and contemporary foe of both genders. So, and then she goes into comparing this story with other stories and how there's a lot of parallels and similarities. And she says, as we examine these leitmotifs, we see the predators in them desire superiority and power over others. Super, super related to narcissists, right? That's exactly what they're about. It's having power over you. Okay, so the next part I highlighted is, it says, the bottom of page 45, the problem with Bluebeard in the fairy tale is that rather than empowering the light of the young feminine forces of the psyche, he is instead filled with hatred and desires to kill the lights of the psyche. Remember, I was talking about that spark inside, the light inside, which, feels very spiritual when you're a spiritual person. It is like they're trying to snuff out that light inside of you. It says, it is not hard to imagine that in such a malignant formation there is trapped one who once wished for surpassing light and fell from grace because of it. So in the Christian belief system, it would be, Satan, the fallen, because he was fallen, kicked out of heaven, right? We can understand why thereafter the exiled one maintains a heartless pursuit of the light of others. That's the whole point of the darkness and spirituality, is just to seek out and snuff out the light in other people. It's sadistic. We can imagine that it hopes that if it could gather enough souls to itself, it could make a blaze of light that would finally rescind its darkness and repair its loneliness. Bam! I mean, how? This is totally related to narcissism. That's why I'm like, you guys have to get this book. Yeah, it's like that's a huge quality of narcissism is, they see this light inside of you. They're jealous of it. They want it. It's like a weird thing where they both want to snuff it out and they also want to mimic you and become you. It's like a super malignant extreme form of jealousy or something. So I just thought that was incredible. And then it goes into a section about naive women as prey. It says, psychologically, young girls and young boys are as though asleep about the fact that they themselves are prey. You know, because when you're young, a lot of times you don't really understand the depth of the darkness and how it operates in this world. And a lot of us don't learn this until our 40s or even older. We're just so trusting. You know, we want so bad to believe in, there's good in everyone, and that, everybody's the same on the inside, and it's not true. All right. So I wrote the word love bomb out to the side of this section. I put, however, the young wife has fooled herself. Initially, she felt fearful of Bluebeard. Remember, that was her first gut instinct. She was wary. However, a little pleasure out in the woods causes her to overrule her intuition. And that's what narcissists do. They love bomb you, I was watching the Dr. Seuss, The Grinch movie with Jim Carrey recently with my daughter, and you can totally see a theme of narcissism in this movie. I mean, to me, it was, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, so if you haven't seen it or you don't want any kind of spoilers, then you want to skip this part, okay? But if you've seen it, you're cool with it, then you can proceed. But to me, the mayor was definitely the narcissist in the movie, because when they were all young, he was a bully in school, and he bullied the Grinch. And the Grinch had a crush on Martha, who is, the one, when they're all adults, that the mayor is trying to get to marry him. He wants her to marry him, and she still loves the Grinch, and the Grinch still loves her. And so the Grinch is like, I think the word is scorned, because he was mocked and ridiculed as a kid, and, he was made to be an outcast. And the mayor, of course, even though he was this bully, somehow he rose to power, and, everybody just thought he was this grand and great guy. At least outwardly, nobody would challenge him. And so there's a lot of heavy narcissistic qualities to that movie. It was really interesting to watch. It has a great ending, though. I will say that. I like it. But yeah, and I was reminded of that movie after what I just read, because it says, about the Bluebeard tale. The girl was, fearful of him from the beginning, but then she changed her mind after a little pleasure out in the woods, and it caused her to overrule her intuition. And so in the movie with the Grinch, he's, the mayor is proposing to Martha, and he's like, and here's a new car, and here's this huge, it was like this ridiculous, huge, gaudy diamond ring, and he's trying to like buy her love, essentially. And the Grinch is just like fuming, because I mean, it's the connection with Martha and him, it's like real, In other words, no gifts needed. Yeah, but some people fall for that, right? Okay, so then I'm just going to read to you guys some of the highlighted parts of chapter 2, just as points of discussion. So it says, at the beginning of our lives, our feminine viewpoint is very naive, meaning that emotional understanding of the covert is very faint. Totally resonates with me. But this is where we all begin as females. We are naive, and we talk ourselves into some very confusing situations. To be uninitiated in the ways of these matters means that we are in a time of our life when we are vulnerable to seeing only the overt. Yes, a million times. Like, you'd have to smack me over the head to get me to see stuff sometimes. Still do. I've come a long way, but in some ways, I've come a long way. I really have. But, and it's a brash awakening. But there's always things to learn. It says, many women do not even have the basic teaching about predators that a wolf mother gives her pups. Exactly. So to be able to teach children at the appropriate developmental stage, maturity level, about the fact that, there's there's very, very, very dangerous people in this world. And sometimes, it may be someone in a position of power, like in that movie, or someone who, it's the covert part that's sticky, that gets a lot of us. It's just not obvious. It's not evident. It's behind closed doors. So, and then I highlighted this part here on the bottom of page 50. When the youthful spirit marries the predator, she is captured or restrained during a time in her life that was meant to be an unfoldment. Instead of living freely, she begins to live falsely. The deceitful promise of the predator is that the woman will become a queen in some way. That's the whole future faking thing, right? When in fact her murder is being planned. There is a way out of all this, but one must have a key. And that leads into the next section, which she calls the key to knowing the importance of snuffling. So that last paragraph I just read there reminds me, because it says, instead of living freely, she begins to live falsely, because she's, ignoring that intuition. And it reminds me of something someone said, and it was just like, yes, exactly, that we have to drop our own mask too, because we feel like, well, we're genuine and authentic, right? But are we really? When we're ignoring our gut because we just want so bad for something to work out, or because we're trying to reason with ourselves with logic, because we don't yet have the hard concrete proof to back up our intuition. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that was really resonated with me. It's like getting real with yourself. Like, you know what? I did see red flags in the beginning. You know what? I did feel really uncomfortable around that person. Or, even without evidence. So we have to get real with ourselves as we're trying to grow and learn in this awareness. All right. So then under the next section here, it says, Bluebeard forbids the young woman to use the one key that would bring her to consciousness. To forbid a woman to use the key to consciousness strips away Wild Woman, her natural instinct for curiosity, and her discovery of what lies underneath. Without the wild knowing, the woman is without proper protection. Our intuition is our protection. If she attempts to obey Bluebeard's command not to use the key, she chooses death for her spirit. By choosing to open the door to the ghastly secret room, she chooses life. So when we're honest with ourselves about a narcissist and the depths of the danger and the depths of the darkness, yeah, I can see how it's akin to opening a door like that and seeing something that startling. Basically, you're just, it's like being born again. You're you see through new eyes going forward, and it's a hard awakening. But once you've got it, you've got it. And it even talks about that, like how you can't unknow what you know. It even talks about that in this chapter. So, like I said, this book, it's just incredible. It talks about asking questions, and questions are the keys that cause the secret doors of the psyche to swing open, not blindly trusting, asking questions, being willing to ask hard questions, and being willing to see the truth, no matter how hard it is, right? It says, as the naive woman, the naive nature begins to mature, it's at that point, that you question what is behind the visible. It's like you're looking beneath the surface. You're willing to see the covert. The part that you don't have evidence for yet, but that your intuition's screaming at you about. That part, you're willing to see it at that point. And then it goes into a section of chapter 2 called The Animal Groom. And it just talks about It says the animal groom character is a marker in the psyche, symbolizing a malevolent thing disguised as a benevolent thing, just like the mayor. You know, in that movie I was talking about, right? When a woman is attempting to avoid the facts of her own devastations, her night dreams will shout warnings to her, warnings and exhortations to wake up or get help or flee. So a lot of times our dreams do speak to us when we're not willing to go there in our conscious awareness because it's too shocking. This is all like an unconscious or subconscious process. Then it comes out in our dreams. We may start having, nightmares that have the same theme or something like that. It's like trying so hard to get us to consciously become aware of it and accept it. Then it goes into a section called blood scent. And it basically says the blood in the story, that was in the room and that got on the key and she tried to hide it and clean it. The blood in the story is symbolic of blood from the soul. Blood from the soul. It says, when the weeping key that was weeping blood, the crying question stains our personas, we cannot any longer hide our travails. We can say what we like, present the most smiling facade, but once we have seen the shocking truth of the killing room, we can no longer pretend it does not exist. Exactly like what I was saying. Once you know, you can unknow. And then she goes into a section about other stories that are related to this, and just starts to take a positive turn, from there, talking about the feminine essence, the feminine soul, and how women get to a point where they plan their escapes. And remember, this is presented as an internal predator in your psyche, but yet if you've been through the receiving end of narcissism, it's like you can't read this and not feel it from that angle, So, okay, I'll read this paragraph to you here, the bottom of page 60. There are times to shiver and run, and there are times to not. At this time, a young woman must not shiver and must not grovel. Bluebeard's young wife's plea for time to gather herself together is not the signal of submission to the predator. It is her shrewd way of gathering her energy up into muscle. Like certain creatures of the forest, she is poised to make an all-out strike against the predator. She dives into the ground to escape the predator and then unexpectedly surfaces behind him. That's where you have to be really smart if you feel like you're in a dangerous situation, and I certainly advise getting professional help. I just want to put that out there. And then the next section is in chapter 2 is called Giving the Cry. And immediately I thought of, there's an amazing coach on YouTube who talks about screaming your war cry. And I was like, yes, exactly. So the brothers in the story, remember how she had called out for them to come and help her? That's the part that she discusses in this section here. It's all symbolism, so the brothers are symbolic as well. And so it says, when women resurface from their naivety, they draw with them and to themselves something unexplored. In this case, the now wiser woman draws an internal masculine energy to her aid. In Jungian psychology, this element has been named animus, a partly mortal, partly instinctual, partly cultural element of a woman's psyche that shows up in fairy tales and in dream symbols as her son, husband, stranger, and or lover. And then it says the brothers represent the blessing of strength and action. So, which is typical of masculine energy. And, this is usually a battle you have to fight alone when you're trying to, come into this awareness, when you're entangled with someone like this, and figuring out what's going on and planning your exit and everything. So, and then it just there's a lot more to this chapter, but I just really wanted to hit the highlights with you all and not make this super long. We're already at 30 minutes. And then this is very relevant too. It says, when we refuse to entertain the predator, its strength is extracted and it is unable to act without us. Same thing. If you've got a narcissist that's trying to engage you in circular conversations, word salad, whatever it is, they're always trying to poke at you and get you to react. If you just choose, once you become aware, if you choose to disengage, that's the way you win. You don't play the game, you don't participate. And so that's exactly that sentence right there. It was totally relatable to that, in my opinion. Talks about the dark man in women's dreams a little bit more in depth there, and how it, our subconscious is trying to speak to us. So, and that's it. So it's a fantastic book altogether, and a great chapter too. I hope you guys got something out of this, and I just thank you for joining me on this journey. And I'm looking forward to chapter 3. And I meant to read to you the title of chapter 3. Let me see if I can find it here real quick. Okay, so chapter 3 is called Nosing Out the Facts: The Retrieval of Intuition as Initiation. So, you're born with it. Just like the younger sister in the story that marries Bluebeard, she talks herself out of it, totally relatable. And then the retrieval of intuitions, like getting it back. You have to go through these really hard lessons sometimes in life to realize, oh, yeah, that's important. I never want to deny that gut feeling, that gut check ever again, right? So thanks again, and I hope you'll join me for more videos. And please give it a like if you enjoyed it, and hit subscribe if you haven't already, and the bell if you want to be notified the next time I post. I try to post at least 2 or 3 videos a week. So thanks so much. Have a great day.